So we've got a 45-minute flow here with a few minutes of motor control and core stability activation just as a primer. And I'll just talk you through some of the key points and cues, things to think about as we go through. So make sure you get a little bit of a warm-up in. I was jumping on the trampoline just before this for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then we'll start with a little micro activation warm-up just to get everything fired up. So starting off with some slow squats, you can see in the first rep I was drawing in, feeling my belly to draw in air deep into my lower lungs. This will stabilize the core, keep it nice and straight. Then with your feet you want to grip the ground like a tripod, so your big toe, your little toe and your heel, and screw the floor outwards. And then as you screw the floor outwards, you'll be able to sit down and drop into that space that you've created within your hips. From here we're going into some squat to stands, so holding our toes. If you can't hold your toes, that's fine, hold your ankles. And we're just going through a little bit of range here, slowly getting into the pattern. Use your elbows to push your knees out the way and create that external hip rotation to allow you to really sit deep into that position in the bottom. So next we're going to go into an arabesque, which is essentially just a single leg balance. And what you should think about here is imagine 3 buckets, one on your head, one on your knee and one on your toe. So you're really keeping that knee and toe pointed high up to the sky, with imagining you got a bucket on top. From here we're gonna keep a straight line from our head through to our bum, and then as we fold over we're gonna kick our foot back like we're trying to open a door behind us. So from there you can either come straight back up and then go into another rep, or you can try a single leg aeroplane, which is essentially what I'm doing here. So arms out to the side and then rotating around till you're parallel one way and then back the other way. These are quite tricky, took me quite a while to master these, but they're a really good warm-up for any hip dominated movement or any sort of exercise really, because you're activating all your muscles around your lumbopelvic and sort of hip and core regions, as well as developing that neuromuscular capacity to balance on one leg, which is obviously very helpful for any single leg movement, including running, jumping, change of direction. So next activation exercise for the core is a bird dog. You can do this either from press up position or from just hands and knees. And what we're going to do is reach out like you're trying to grab something in front of you with one hand, but at the same time you need to keep a door open behind you with the opposite leg. So we're just going to hold that position for 1 or 2 seconds and then switch sides. So you're creating a really long bridge here with your lower back being right in the middle of it. So don't let the middle of that bridge sag. You can imagine you've got a flame right underneath your belly button. So last bit of core activation before we get going is a few side plank transitions. So it's essentially just going from one side plank to the other. If you want, you can do these with both feet on the floor and from your elbow. That makes it easier. It doesn't matter, just maintain stability. We're spending 2 or 3 seconds on each side here, just moving, working on that transition from one to the other, trying to stay really stable and solid in each side plank. So now we're going to start stretching out the calves in the downwards dog position. So just trying to tease out any sort of tightness in any particular areas, perhaps in the calves or in the hamstrings, or perhaps even in the lats. So if you anchor down one hand, you can swing your bum over the opposite direction. This can really open out that whole anchored side all the way through the lat and down to the IT band. So big deep breath in through your nose, and as you exhale through your mouth, you're driving your chest through towards your knees. Then we're going to come into an upwards facing dog. So lower yourself down, let your toes out behind you, then press up into an upward facing dog, keeping your shoulders down away from your ears and driving those hips in towards the floor. Tuck your toes back underneath and then press up into a downwards dog, driving that chest towards your knees. This time your knees can be a little bit straighter, heels a little bit closer towards the floor. Now we're going to try a single arm downwards dog. So reaching with your left hand, reach through and across to your right leg and see if you can pull yourself through a little bit, trying to tuck your head underneath your arm. And then we're going to switch sides. And slowly back down into an upwards facing dog. So tuck your toes back behind you. Drive your chest up, ears away from shoulders, and hips into the floor. After your upward facing dog, you can sit straight back onto your knees, setting up for a child's pose. First, just take a little lean back, driving those knees into the floor, and stretch out those hip flexors and quads. Now we're going to sit up nice and tall, deep breath in through the nose. Imagine you're being lifted by the top of your head like a balloon pulling you up. Fold forwards as you exhale into the child's pose, reaching out as far as you can in front of you. Another breath in through your nose and exhale and creep those fingers even further forward. Now you're going to walk those hands over towards the left hand side as far as you can. And we're going to do a few breaths here, so big deep breath into the lungs, and you'll feel your right side kind of open up and stretch out those intercostal muscles between your ribs on the right hand side as your lungs fill with air. And then exhale. We'll go for 2 breaths here, and then walk your hands over to the other side. My hands were freezing at this point. Same again, big deep breath in through the nose, exhale through the mouth, and as you inhale through the nose, you'll feel all the left hand side stretching out those ribs, stretching out those intercostal muscles, filling up that space on your whole left hand side. So now we're going to come back into the middle and walk our hands up even further, and you can keep walking them up until your bum comes off of your heels, and then we're going to get up onto our fingers so that our hands are a little bit higher than our shoulders. I want you to actually try and screw your fingers slightly outwards, so your right hand clockwise, your left hand anti-clockwise. And then from here, keep your shoulders down and away from your ears. Maintain this screwed and locked position, even when we try and mobilize the thoracic spine. To set the hips, we need to rotate them anteriorly. So imagine you've got a tail and you're trying to tuck it between your legs. And at the same time, imagine you need a wee and you're trying to hold it in. As you passively exhale out of your mouth, really slowly and gently, actively pull your ribs down, compressing the air out. Squeeze your ribs towards your belly button and your belly button towards your ribs as the air releases out of you and your chest releases towards the floor, letting your hands drive high above your head and really mobilizing that thoracic spine. From here, we're going to go back up into a press-up position, and slowly and gently we're going to lift up our right leg up towards our right hand, drop that back knee, drop the back foot behind us, and then drop that inside elbow down towards the floor. Draw breath in through your nose, down into your deep belly, lengthening and elongating your spine, coming up slightly just to reach your full spinal length. Then from here, exhale again, dropping your chest towards the floor. As you gently exhale and release the tension, allow your chest to drop towards the floor and your hip to release that pressure. This often helps to actually really relax the face, maybe close the eyes, feel the jaw release and the cheeks relax. You can sort of let yourself be quite passive in dropping further towards the floor. With the hand that's closest to your foot, so your right hand, place it on your knee and begin to press that foot out. You can let your foot roll a little bit, get a little bit of rotation in the ankle as well, but with your opposite hand, press it hard down into the ground as you look over that shoulder. Draw a breath in through the nose, into the belly, and as you exhale, you can rock forwards, pushing that knee out to the side. You can let your ankle roll a little bit, driving those hips down towards the floor. Now we're going to straighten that leg out, pointing our toe up towards our face, and then shifting our weight slightly back, like we're opening a door with our bum. Then draw a breath deep into the belly, and I don't mean a big breath, I mean deep into your stomach. You can sometimes put your hand on your tummy to really feel where you want it to go. So yeah, big deep breath, low into the belly, come up tall again, elongate the spine, and then walk your hands forwards towards your feet and let yourself relax towards the floor again. So now you can walk over towards the left a little bit and stretch out that side. Do a few breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. You'll feel this a little bit more on the inside of the leg, so towards the knee area. Just tease out any tightness you have over here. You can gently start walking your way back over to the other side, and then place one hand either on the inside of your foot or the outside of the foot, whichever is more comfortable. And then with your other arm, you're going to sweep around nice and wide, reaching up towards the sky. And we're going to follow it with our eyes. At the same time, you're keeping your feet and your knees on hip-width train tracks. Our thoracic spine extends a little as we inhale. So inhale and reach round, and exhale and come back down. You can really feel all the different tightnesses in your hamstrings, either internal or external, by rotating your foot to the left and to the right, just slowly, passively moving it through that range of motion. Trying to move from the hip and not so much the ankle and the knee. Place it back down, feeling the floor, gripping it, using the tripod foot, so your heel, your big toe and your little toe. Then reach back with your right arm to reach your left leg, pulling your foot in towards your hips as you let your hips drop towards the floor. Imagine you're tucking your tail between your legs again. Holding your chest proud, press the floor away with your left palm. So now we can actually readjust the grip. If you reach around the other side of your hand, holding on so your palm is next to your little toes, then you can pull your foot a little bit further outwards to the left hand side as you look round to the right hand side. So you can allow yourself to kind of twist into this motion, pulling your leg out to the side and This will stretch all the sort of medial side of your quadriceps, so the vastus medialis, which is the most inner quadricep. So now we're going to switch around to the opposite side, so right hand on the floor, left hand reaching back, grabbing on the outside, so palms on the side of your big toe, and we're going to look round to the left, twist the shoulders round to the left, and let our hips sink into that twisted position. After a breath here, we're going to reset, getting our feet, knees and hips all on hip width train tracks, reaching back with the right arm again, and then from here we're going to do some PNF stretching. So drive your foot into your hand about 50%, then 70%, and then 100%, and then exhale and relax and pull into that stretch a little bit further. At the same time, contract your glute, and by reciprocal inhibition, this should actually allow an even further stretch. Turning on the glute will turn off the quad and the hip flexor. So we can lower that foot back down to the floor now and let your heel drop over to the right hand side. At the same time, we're going to sort of swivel the shoulders and the hips around and actually shift the hips towards your right foot. So we're trying to stretch out the inside of the left leg. This sort of really opens out those hip adductors that get quite tight during running and change direction tasks. So breathe in through the nose, and as you slowly exhale, keeping your heel and your knee on the floor, shift your hips towards that heel of your right foot. Now straighten back up with the shoulders, bringing the heel back up so that everything's on hip width train tracks again. And then from here we're going to swivel on the left toe, just swivel that left knee all the way out, keeping the right leg straight and where it is. Draw a breath deep into the belly as you lift yourself up, elongating the spine. And from here we're going to fold forwards towards the floor. You can use your left elbow to drive that left knee out a little bit if you need to. Then we're going to start walking over towards our right hand side, our straight leg, pointing our toe up towards the sky and reaching around and forwards, using your breath each time to slowly creep further and further forwards. One last breath through the nose, and as you exhale, see if you can reach that left hand underneath and through your right leg, just to get a bit of T-spine mobility. Okay, we're gonna creep back over to the left hand side now, drawing another breath in through the nose, elongating the spine nice and tall, and then reaching over with that right arm. So keeping our feet pretty much where they are, we're going to swivel that left knee back around and underneath us, so we're back in line with our hip width train tracks. Knees, toes, hips, all in line. Got like a 90-degree angle in our both legs. From here we're going to set our hips, so tuck our tail between our legs, really pulling our ribs down and our hips forwards. When we do this and rotate our hips into this posteriorly tilted position, you'll feel your left hip flexor start to tighten up. And that's okay, that's what we're trying to stretch here. So it might just be that posteriorly tilted position, when you're tucking your tail between your legs, is enough to get that stretch. So that's the main thing. First get that, then you can start to push your hip forwards, and then we're going to reach up. Big deep breath through the nose, like we've got a balloon lifting us from our head, reaching our hands up over the top and leaning away towards the right hand side. As we start to lean further over to the side, you should start to feel that TFL, which is just right above your hip, connects to the IT band, start to stretch out and elongate. Mine gets really tight with running and things like that. Okay, so now we can take our right foot and step it across to the left hand side a little bit, and we're going to come down into a pigeon stretch. try and set your shin up parallel with your shoulders. I have to actually hold my foot here in this position, otherwise it will just slip back towards me. And then with your other hand, try and hold your knee down as well. So instead of just trying to smash your face into the floor, we're going to do what we've practiced before. So drawing a breath into the belly, elongating the spine, and then as you exhale, folding forwards. But we want to try and maintain our shoulders and our hips nice and square. Imagine you've got two walls either side of you, and you just come in straight down as you exhale. Feel free to reset with another inhalation, and this time as you exhale, play around with the movement and look over to the left, look over to the right. You can start to sort of tease out any tighter areas that you may have. When you're ready, you can begin to unravel out of that and bring your foot back into press up position and press into another downward dog. This time perhaps getting your knees a little bit straighter and your heels a little bit closer to the ground. So this is a bit of a different one that I haven't seen anywhere else, but I like it. It's essentially a downward dog, but we're shifting our hips from one side to the other. So if you're shifting to the left, make sure you lock out that right leg and really anchor in that right arm. And then you're allowing your hips to shift to the opposite direction. This should really stretch out the lat and the hip on the right hand side if you're shifting to the left, and vice versa. I find this really good for stretching out my hip, so just around my TFL, but have a go with this and spend a few seconds going from left to right and just have a play, see what works. Okay, so we're gonna do the other foot now. So gently and quietly lift the left foot up to next to the left hand, and we're gonna make sure our hips are facing forwards, they're on hip width train tracks. We're gonna lengthen the spine, drawing a breath into our belly and folding forwards, dropping that inside elbow towards the floor. Take a breath through your nose, reset the breath and the hips again, and then we can press our left knee out with our left hand, looking our head and shoulders round to the left as you exhale into this twist. You can let your foot roll up a little bit. So release the tension, shift back, draw a breath in through the nose, and as you exhale you can shift the hips back forwards and the knee back out to the side, and at the same time reach round towards the sky and follow it with your eyes. From here we can shift our bum back, keeping our front left foot pointing up towards the sky, and from here we're going to reset our breath again, reset our spine, and exhale towards the floor, reaching forwards. Like we did on the other side, try and reach your right hand underneath your left leg, and then bring your hands just either on the inside of your foot or the outside of your foot with your right hand, and then your left hand you're going to try and swing around and open up towards the sky, looking up and following with your eye. This is quite a tricky one, especially on the outside of the hip, depending on your mobility, so feel free to put your right hand either on the inside of your leg or on top of your shin, whatever feels most comfortable for you. We're going to actively take our foot through a little bit of rotation, trying to keep the rotation actually from the hip rather than quite passive with it, allowing as much range as possible and comfortable. Placing the right hand down to the floor, we can reach back with the left hand to grab our foot. We're going to set our hips forwards, so tucking our tail between our legs and pressing them down towards the floor as we pull our foot in towards our bum. As always, using the breath to release the tension and direct your focus to whatever you're trying to stretch or wherever you're trying to move your body. So like we did on the other leg, we're going to switch over our hands, so left hand on the floor, right hand reaching back and grabbing on the inside of the foot, so around the side of the big toe. On a sort of parallel premise that training the exact same way will result in sort of stagnation, such as just doing the same type of exercise or in the same plane of motion, the same thing goes for stretching. So that's why this is a really nice way to sort of switch it up, and you might find different points of tension which you didn't know you had before. So again, switching over, right hand on the floor, left hand reaching back now and grabbing on the outside, so pinky toe side, and letting the hip shift to the right while you pull your foot to the left. So setting up now for our PNF again. So we're pressing hard into our foot with progressive tension, so building up tension, kicking our foot away, and then releasing that, exhaling and pulling as far in as possible. So this is essentially tricking your muscles into thinking that there's more tension, like the tension that you just created, and when you release that, it allows you to actually stretch it further, which is called autogenic inhibition. Similarly, at the same time, if you actually try and actively pull yourself into this, so squeezing the glutes, actually turns off the muscles on the opposite side, so the quads and the hip flexors. This is called reciprocal inhibition. So before I put you to sleep with science, pop your foot back onto the floor, and keeping the left foot where it is, we're going to swivel our right knee round, so that we're into this sort of half straddle position. You should feel this stretching all the inside down of your left leg, but make sure you use your elbow or hand to push your right knee out as well, so that it's stretching the inside of your right leg as well. Draw a breath in through the nose, and as you exhale, creep your hands forwards. So if your left foot is 12 o'clock, start at 1 o'clock, and then you can do another one at 3 o'clock and kind of move yourself around. From here we're going to go through a few thoracic rotations. So placing left hand on the floor, reaching up to the sky with the right hand, trying to get as much rotation as possible. As you come down, we can do a little thread the needle, so reaching underneath our left arm. Inhale through the nose as you reach up to the sky, and then exhale as you reach underneath your arm left. So we can now swivel back round into our half kneeling position, although you might need to shift your back foot over a little bit just so it's in line with your hips again. So knees and hips all in line on hip width train tracks. And then from here we're going to set the hips again, so same as before, tuck in tail between our legs. You can actually just put your hands on your hips and go through that range of motion to get a sort of external feel of what anterior and posterior pelvic tilt feels like. Another thing that can help when you're in this position here particularly is to actively pull back with with your left foot, so driving your hips forwards, and this will really help when you breathe in through your nose, lift up and reach across towards the left side. This will help sort of stretch out that TFL on the right hand side. As you can see here, I'm actually continually resetting and resetting my hips, pulling them forwards, pulling my ribs down before I go on to sort of challenge that position. We can now bring that front foot across a little bit to the edge of the mat and then try and place it down flat on the floor. And the idea here is to keep the shin in line with the shoulders, and we want to try and keep our hips nice and straight. So imagine you've got headlights on them and you want them to always be pointing forwards. Don't want to be spinning out and rotating to sort of compensate for this movement. It doesn't really matter how far your torso gets down to the floor, it's more about finding the correct positioning, and then you can slowly sort of start to build that close to the floor as you get better. Once you've organized yourself into your positioning, take a deep breath in through the nose, elongating the spine, and instead of just diving headfirst into this, I want you to sort of fold from the hips and come down as a flat plank all the way from the hips. And then towards the end, you can start to let your upper torso and head start to go heavy towards the floor. Continue that feeling of heaviness throughout the rest of your body, down your spine, and most definitely through the hip that you're lying on. Spend a little bit of time down here and convince yourself that you can sort of relax and settle into this position, focusing on the breath and releasing the tension. When you're ready, you can unravel yourself out of that position and sit back onto your bum. We're going to tuck our left foot up underneath us, so in like a semi-cross-legged position. Sit up nice and tall, taking a breath, elongating the spine. Imagine we got a balloon lifting us up, and then reaching over towards that straight leg on the right hand side. Take a hold on your leg or foot wherever is comfortable, and from here we're going to take a few breaths, and each time we do, we're going to let the left hand side of our lungs fill up with air and sort of pull us into a rotation, so you're almost looking underneath your left armpit, allowing those intercostals on the left hand side to fill up, stretch out the lats and the back, as well as the hamstring on your right leg as well. Drawing breath in through the nose and elongating the spine, we're just going to reset, and from here try and stay high as we rotate and lift that left arm over the top. Keeping our shoulders parallel with our right leg. Swap legs round, so we're getting left leg out now, straight out in front, toe pointing up towards the sky, right leg tucked in. Try and get it fairly close in so that the bottom of your foot is flat up against the inside of your left leg. My right leg struggles a little bit here. As per, we're going to take a deep breath in, lift up from the crown of the head, and then fold forwards, reaching down towards the leg. If you can reach your foot, that's great. If not, just grab anywhere on your leg, wherever's comfortable, and you can pull yourself into a little bit of a passive stretch here. So we're going to take another breath, elongating the spine. Imagine we've got a balloon lifting us from our head. And from here we're going to reach up and over with that right arm, keeping our shoulders and torso parallel with our left leg. And then reaching out and over. So you'll feel this less in your hamstring and probably more so in your lower back and your QL muscles. Get really tight if you're doing a lot of sitting down at a desk. So from that seat position, you're going to get your hands behind you, fingers facing back behind you, feet underneath you, and then try and lift your knees up and over. This is a little bit of a weird one. There's a bit of a tipping point just as you get over your feet, but once you do, you'll feel it in your quads and hip flexors. Depending on your shoulder mobility, if you can try and keep your hands where they are, and as you drive your hips forwards and your knees down towards the floor, you'll feel it in your shoulders as well. I just came out of this to reset and go single leg with the other leg just kicked out in front, just to get a little bit more of a quad stretch to further sort of accentuate this stretch of the hip and the quad. Reach up and away with your arm directly in line with your thigh. This way you're really stretching out that whole lateral side. So from here I'm just going to transition into a deep squat. Everyone will be at a different level with this, so just go to what's sort of comfortable for you. Ideally though, we are heels to the floor, driving our knees out so we can create that space underneath us, external rotation of the hip, and really challenging that ankle mobility as well. I'm going to work on some thoracic mobility, so grab right hand onto left ankle and then left arm reaches round, pointing up towards the sky. If you can go beyond the sky and back around the other way, then by all means do. As you can see, my thoracic rotation, particularly on the right hand side, is horrendous, but that's what we're here for. With the hand that's on your ankle, use it to pull yourself in, and use your elbow to push the other knee out. It's also important to remember to inhale as you reach round. This is because our thoracic spine and our whole thoracic cavity expands and extends as we take a breath in. So this will help with the extension and rotation of the thoracic spine. So we're going to set up into a wide start position. You can have your feet facing directly forwards or slightly pointed out if that's more comfortable. Rather than bending over from the back, what we're going to do is lift up nice and tall from the crown of our head, and then keeping our spine in this nice straight position, we're going to shift our bum back like we're trying to open a door with our bum and fold forwards from the hips. So the distance from your ribs to your pelvis should stay the same, and your bum is going to shift way back as the weight goes onto your heels and your torso comes forwards. From here we can walk our hands over to one side for a few seconds and then the other. Go for 2 or 3 reps here, and then we're going to again try and work on a little bit of thoracic mobility. So reaching round, hand on either the floor or your leg, wherever's comfortable, and then opposite arm trying to reach up, round towards the top of the sky, or even slightly further if you can. But the idea here is to push with the opposite arm so that you're gaining a little bit of extra range, but this shouldn't be painful or have any sharp sort of pains or anything like that. Again, be sure to inhale through the nose as you reach round so that you can expand and extend that thoracic spine, and also look round. So follow your hand with your eyes so that that's basically the top of your spine, and that will just further assist the rotation through the upper thoracic. We're gonna sit into a side lunge here. I appreciate everyone's going to be at a different level with this, but you can basically just go as deep as you can, and if you hold something out in front of you, like either a weight or if you're holding onto an object or a wall in front of you, this can help just maintain your balance so you don't fall back. And we're just going to spend a little bit of time here. One thing that can help with this as well is if you use your elbow to drive out the bent knee. Drive that knee out just to get an extra bit of range in that hip, which sometimes helps. As you can see, my left foot really kind of struggles with this. I can't quite get my heel to the floor, but it just takes time. The more time you spend in the position, the easier it will be to maintain it. So of course this is going to really stretch out the adductors and release a bit of tension there. I sometimes get pain in my knees or the inside of my knee if I increase my running volume, and this really helps sort of attenuate that pain and stress that I get there. And again, always bringing the focus back to the breath, keeping it under control and observing it as it comes in and out. Whenever you feel your mind start to wander on anything else, just bring it back to your breath, back to your body, and can help you stay focused on this task so that you can carry out the rest of your day with a fresh mind. Okay, so the next move is standing up with feet underneath hips, feet facing forwards. We're going to stand nice and tall, elongate the spine, and then fold forwards as we exhale. From here, what we're going to do is extend the left knee, so lock out that left knee, and with your right hand you're going to grab onto your left ankle and allowing the right knee to stay bent, loose and kind of soft. You're then going to reach round with your left arm up towards the sky. This will really stretch out the TFL and those lateral hip muscles on your left hand side. And then we're going to switch sides and do the same on the other side. Be sure to inhale as you reach round for the same reason as before, extending and rotating that thoracic spine. And you'll feel this mostly in that external hip. Sometimes if my IT band and TFL is really tight, I can actually feel it translate all the way down to my knee. So just go relatively easy with this one. Okay, lying down on our tummies now, we're going to stick out our left hand at about 90 degrees or maybe slightly above, so in line with our shoulders. And then you're going to maintain your shoulder down and away from your ear, so you're actively keeping it down and back. And then we're going to swing our right leg back and behind us. And our right leg is hanging kind of as like a weight to pull us over onto that shoulder. So you should feel this stretching out your chest and pectoralis muscles. This shouldn't feel uncomfortable or pinching in your shoulder. If it does, you need to reset, depress your shoulder, so keep it away from your ear, and try again. Play around with putting your arm at different angles. So start with it at about 90 degrees, so in line with your shoulders, and then do the other side. And then when you come back for your second round, try it a little bit higher. So this will start to stretch out more of the pec minor, and just a different angle on the fibers. I'm particularly tight in this pec minor and like that deep pec area underneath the armpit, and so what can actually help this is a little trick which you can, when you're in this stretch position, is shift your hips down and back whilst you anchor your hand in the position that it's at. So this is just pulling the shoulder up and away, as opposed to just sort of twisting around and stretching it superficially. You're actually pulling it down and away. Stay here for 2 to 3 breaths with 2 to 3 sets on each side. Sit back onto your heels into child's pose. Ideally, your feet are facing directly back behind you, in line with your knees and toes, as opposed to sort of pointing in. I kind of struggle with this, and if you really struggle with child's pose, you can stick a towel underneath behind your knees, or some kind of soft object to sort of help you get into this position without it being painful. And from here, we're just going to sit up nice and tall. So imagine you've got a balloon pulling you from the top of your head, and then we're going to tilt our head over to one side and give it a little bit of assistance with the hand, but being quite gentle, especially to begin with, and then you can start to just build this up. To progress and extend this stretch further down your shoulder, so your trapezius, you can hold on with your opposite hand onto your ankle, so you're basically keeping your shoulder down as you pull with the other hand on your head and neck, pulling it away. Make sure not to let your shoulders roll forwards while you do this. So keep your chest proud and imagine you've got a £5 note between your 2 scapula in your back. Okay, this is the last one, and it's a little bit of a weird one. I don't think I've ever seen someone do it before, but you're essentially in a semi-squat position, leaning forwards, and we're stretching out the adductors, so the inside of your legs, and we're using the elbows to push your knees out. So my weight is sort of 50% on my hands, 50% on my feet, and pressing my knees out to the side. So as I lean forward onto my elbows are pressing my knees out to the side, stretching my adductors. And from here we're in a perfect position to give a little handstand a go, although these are far from perfect. One last stretch that's actually really beneficial is just a passive hang. So if you have the ability to do this either on a pull-up bar or a tree or the side of your house, you're just hanging, and this is good for a few reasons. The first is your grip strength. The second is decompressing your spine, which is really good if you're doing a lot of axial loading or lifting, heavy lifting. A good way to do this is to just be completely limp and you'll feel like the lower part of your back kind of starts to stretch out, which feels really nice, and also sort of decompresses your spine, takes that load off. And then the final reason is if you have quite tight pec muscles or pec minor, those tight muscles underneath your armpit, from lots of internal rotation, either throwing or benching, this is a really nice way to stretch those out as well. So to do this, you lift your legs up, keeping your shoulders down and back, and you sit in kind of like an L-sit position, which will pull yourself forwards and help to stretch out those tight pecs. Thanks for watching, listening, and getting involved. Please get in touch if you would like programming or have any other questions regarding strength and conditioning.